What's the weirdest thing a guest has ever done in your Airbnb? I get asked that a lot. Honestly, it's hard to pick just one, but the Green Street flat in Soho had a moment that still makes me laugh and cringe every time. It started like any other Friday morning. I was sipping my way too strong coffee and checking my phone for last-minute messages from guests. That week, a couple from Germany was scheduled to check in around 3 p.m. I'd already prepped the flat, towels folded, coffee pods stacked, and the vintage record player dusted because, Soho vibes. They arrived a bit earlier than expected. The woman was bubbly and had this contagious energy, practically skipping up the stairs. Her partner, on the other hand, looked like he had personally carried the weight of the Berlin Wall on his shoulders all week. Still, I welcomed them, handed over the keys, and gave my usual spiel about the apartment, the street, and the fact that the neighbor downstairs might occasionally play saxophone at 2 a.m., a fact I conveniently hide from most guests. Everything seemed fine until about an hour later. I got a text. Is it okay if we cook something? It smells amazing in the kitchen, I thought. Sure, that's normal. A few minutes later, we think the stove is smoking? I ran over, imagining the worst. Smoke billowed from a frying pan. They had somehow managed to burn olive oil to the point where it looked like a tiny fog machine had gone off in my kitchen. I helped them ventilate, laughed nervously, and reminded them that the fire extinguisher wasn't just decorative. After that little drama, I thought I could finally relax. But the real chaos came around 10 p.m. I got a call from the building superintendent. Someone's walking around the hallways in pajamas singing opera. My stomach sank. I rushed over, and sure enough, the German couple was performing some impromptu duet for all of Soho to enjoy. I tried to get them back inside politely, but they were so enthralled in their performance that it felt like I was interrupting La Scala. I finally got them settled, and the apartment returned to a state of semi-normalcy. That is, until checkout morning. I went in to grab the linens and noticed something odd in the living room. On the coffee table, there was a small, neatly folded piece of paper. I picked it up. It read, "Thank you for letting us feel like we own Broadway for a night." We may or may not have left a tiny invisible souvenir cue my panic. Invisible souvenir? I tore through the apartment, flipping cushions, opening cupboards, even checking behind the radiator. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Finally, I gave up and left a note on the fridge. Please stop leaving invisible things. Weeks later, I shared the story with a friend who also hosts in the city. She laughed and said, "That's why Airbnb is like owning a pet you don't feed. You love it, but sometimes it leaves you with a weird smell and a note you don't understand." The thing about that Green Street flat is, it's a little chaotic by design. High ceilings, exposed pipes, random art installations. But after that weekend, I started leaving a small jar of chocolate in the fridge with a note, "For invisible souvenirs." Now, every time a guest checks in, I secretly hope they're quirky, chaotic, and maybe a little operatic. It makes hosting feel less like a job and more like living inside a sitcom that I didn't audition for, but somehow got the starring role. And the invisible souvenir, I've never figured out what it really was. Sometimes I like to imagine it was a tiny spark of joy, a memory floating in the ether of the apartment, lingering like the faint scent of burnt olive oil. Either way, it's my favorite hosting story, and a reminder that in New York, anything can happen when you hand someone the keys to your flat.